Today we're going to look at this idea of the dead word list. For several years you've been able to write whatever you want and it was okay, but now looking at this, as you prepare for college, as you get into higher level classes, it is important that you look at this idea of how to actually write in a more formal sense. I've uploaded this document already to the class website, so this is yours for you to look at and play with. Add suggestions to. I suggest printing it out and putting it in your binder as well, because there are occasions where I will allow you to use it on a test or a quiz, especially at the beginning of the year. But looking forward, all assignments, yes, it says all assignments here. It is important that you look at this sense of, it says this idea of homework, classwork, and blogs. Everything we look at in the class, the essays you write, the homework you do at home, handwritten, typed, anything you write for the internet, for the blogs, for your journals, it must be used in the more formal language. The more you practice this, the more you will be prepared when it comes to this making sense. Now, grading purposes wise, you are allowed to use 4 of these before I start counting off points. But anytime a fifth dead word is used, it starts to count points. So if you have 5, it's 1 point off. If you have 10, it's 2 points off. Now those points add up, especially at the beginning if you're having problems remembering which dead words you can and can't use. Now looking at this, the first aspect is this idea of contractions. I know you're used to the more informal language, the text-speak ideas, but keeping in mind here, going into a more formal aspect, these are things that you have to learn to deal with. You can't abbreviate anything. Yes, I just said the word can't. I can still speak it, but I cannot write it. So getting used to that is important. So any contraction, can't, won't, don't, couldn't, wouldn't, these are just a few of them. You need to spell them out instead and look at the examples here. Can't is cannot, shouldn't is should not. Yes, it sounds weird. Yes, it looks weird because since elementary school, this is what you've been doing. But keeping in mind, this is important. Point number 2, all abbreviations. Yes, this is ampersands. Yes, this is hyphens, ellipses, marks, dot, dot, dot. You cannot use any of those. This is where the text speak comes in as well. LOL, JK, any of those you cannot use. The only acceptable ones are these common ones that we use in every day. The first 4 are titles that we give people. Doctor, they've earned this title. They've gone to medical school. They've gone to they've gotten their PhD. It's important they're allowed to use this title. Mr., Mrs., Ms. Is this idea of how we formally address people. So you are allowed to use these. AM and PM, notice they have the periods there. They are acronyms. You do use them for this idea of time, but so you are allowed to use them, but remembering they have periods. If I don't see periods in them, then it counts as an acronym, or it counts as abbreviation that you are not allowed to use. Then we have these ones for calendar issues, this idea of BC and AD. Those are also acceptable. Now, when we're looking at this idea of pronouns, any second person pronoun is usually not acceptable in your writing. When we're writing in the third person, and we'll talk more about pronouns when we look at future aspects of pronouns. For this purpose, we are looking at this idea of second person. You, your, yours, yourself, and yourselves. These show that you were talking at the reader. Yes, you were talking to the reader, but you're not trying to command them. You're not trying to tell them what to do. Instead, you're actually trying to involve them, to get them into your video, to get them, more importantly, to be a part of it. And you're not addressing one specific person, you're addressing everybody in your video. So keeping this in mind when we look at this example, you might be wondering, versus one may wonder. So this idea of including a one instead of a you is important. Now I'd like you to take a minute. You could pause this if you like to, and I'll give you a couple seconds before I actually pause, before you should pause it. But write in your notes this idea of other things that you can use instead of the word you when you're looking at this. So what I suggest in your notes is writing this phrase, you might be wondering. And then I want you to write 5 new ways of saying this. So instead of saying one may wonder, how else would you write this? Now take a few seconds to do that. Okay, now if you need to pause to take more time with that, please do, and bring these examples to class with you tomorrow, because these are ones that we will share in class to help each other get more acquainted with suggestions that can replace these. Now, this next set of phrases, if you look at this idea of not but not limited to. This means that yes, these 8 phrases are not allowed to be used in your writing, but it means that during the year I might add more phrases to it. These phrases are overused, they're what we call trite or cliches, and they're telling us things versus showing us things. I will do a video also on this difference of showing versus telling, and I will use some of these phrases in there, and especially in your writing, these things need to go away. Now looking at this, these are very vague. You need to be more detailed and more specific. So when you get to the end of your essay, instead of saying in conclusion, you're just going to write your conclusion. We know that it's the end of your essay, so you don't need to tell us that it's the end of your essay. Instead, you show us it's the end. The next aspect, the next 3 aspects actually, I am going to talk about, my paper is going to be about, and I'm going to tell you about, are all ones that fall into the same genre of a bad thesis statements. We will look at thesis statements in more detail. I know you had them in 9th and 10th grade, and you should know them like crazy, especially from Ms. Tokatian last year when you're with your writing class. Now, keeping in mind here, your thesis is your roadmap for your essay. Your thesis is not going to say things like, in this essay, I am going to talk about, or my paper is going to be about this, or I am going to tell you about this. I don't care what you're going to tell me. I don't care what you're going to talk about. What I care about is the idea of what you're going to actually write. So keeping that in mind, the more important aspect is to write more specifically. These are vague. And plus, your essays, you're not using first person. So the I, the my, and the I here go away from that. Now, the 5th choice here, have you ever? You're not asking a question in your essay. It doesn't matter, have they ever done this? At the end of your essay, when you write your challenge, it says, have you ever thought about this? Or in your grabber, have you ever done this? It doesn't matter. Be more personal, be more specific, and less vague. Now, the last 3. The next 2, I think and in my opinion. These 2, I don't care what your opinion is. When you're writing your essay, it's obviously your opinion, but you don't have to tell me it's your opinion. So keeping that in mind is important. Okay, and the last one, in the book. Now there are exceptions to this. When we look at this phrase, in the book, it should also technically include in the essay, in the short story, in the novel, in the play. Anything that falls within this realm is important for you to look at. Yes, it's in there. Yes, it's important, but instead of saying in the book, do something more specific and write in a streetcar named Desire. Can't type today. So you're being more specific. Yes, that's the name of the book. It's actually not really a book, it's a play. But yes, that's the name of it, but it's also more specific. So keeping that in mind is important. Now the last ones. Yes, this says all slang words. They are all dead. All of this list you see here is all dead. Yes, this is where the most difficult part comes into when looking at the dead word list. There are several words here. Now, keeping in mind here, this is an alphabetized list. It is 4 columns, and this is where we have the most problem. But the idea here is that these are way too general. They're vague. So instead of saying, and this one's going to be the hardest, instead of saying something is good or that something is great, how great is it? How good is it? It's amazing, it's wonderful, it's stupendous, but yet you can't say it's interesting because that's also on here. All 3 of those words are way overused. Now, if you say something's big, it's bigger, or it's the biggest, there's something wrong with it. How big is it? Is it gigantic? Is it enormous? Look at it from that aspect instead. Then we have the verbs, got, gotta, gotten. Gotta and gotten aren't even words, so don't use them. Use different forms of the verbs. You have got and you have went. Those are both forms of the same verb, and this idea of to go. So where are you going? How are you going there? That's the more important aspect. Are you driving? Are you walking? Are you climbing? Are you dancing? That is more. Are you riding on a train? Are you riding on a bus? Are you flying in a plane? That's more important. Now, the rest of your homework tonight, besides bringing me in the examples here that we had for this one may wonder, you might be wondering. Remember, you need to give me 5 different ways to rewrite this phrase. I want you also to pick 10 of these. You can use the internet, I don't care. You have that at your disposal. But I want you to pick 10 of these words, and I want you to list 5 synonyms for each word. Now, when we come into class tomorrow, we will be sharing, we'll be making posters, we'll be helping you help each other to learn new words that go in these places. So, to reiterate your homework, you have 5 phrases here with the you might be wondering, and you have to pick 10 words. And you need to bring in 5 synonyms of each. And again, yes, you can use the internet. But if you're going to use the internet and you're going to do something like thesaurus.com, don't just pick the first 5, because everybody's going to pick the first 5, and then you're all going to have the same 5 synonyms. So, yes, you can use thesaurus.com, but pick different ones. Pick more interesting ones. Pick ones that draw attention that no one else is going to look at. Okay? Have a great day and see you tomorrow.